Oh boy, Journey. Finally remembered by a lot of people back in the 80s. Those who grew up in the late 70s and 80s, a lot of nice memories of Journey, going to a Journey concert, which was like an arena-sized concert, I think, for the most part. I was not a big fan of Journey, although they had some great, they combined, I don't know how to place it. They were great tunesmiths. And look, I'm just looking back on it. I appreciate them more now than I did back in the day. I'll go into that in just a minute. Steve Perry and Journey, Girl Can't Help It. God, I did love this record. Debuts at number 39 on my fantasy playlist September 6, 1986. The album Raised on Radio. It was the third single. We're going into the fall of 1986. Vivid memories of this song back in the fall of 1986. And the first single was Be True to Yourself or Be Good to Yourself. And then there was Suzanne that came out, and then Girl Can't Help It. I love the acapella. The Steve Perry was brilliant on this record. The build up of this, the build up to the end, the build up to the guitars, the build up to the keyboards. You see it cascading just right across the video channels, off of Night Tracks or MTV or off the radio, FM radio. And then Steve Perry he just soars like an eagle. His voice soars above that. He goes almost a cappella. Certainly to me, one of the most compelling Journey records. This is from someone who wasn't even a real big fan of Journey. But here's the thing about Steve Perry. Looking back on Steve Perry. Steve Perry was a classic blue-eyed soul singer. Probably underrated. The guy was a combination of rock and blue-eyed soul singing. Blue-eyed soul singer. When he did Oh Sherry back in 1984, when he started belting it out, he was starting to enter into Otis Redding territory. And that's no exaggeration. That's the funny thing. You see, I wasn't into Journey that much in the 80s, but in the 90s, I found myself missing Journey. They did get back together and they came out with an album, I think, in 1996. Well, anyway, this record was written by keyboard player Jonathan Cain. Jonathan Cain, I mean, bad English. He was in bad English. He was in Babies. And along with the group, he was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Happened relatively recently, April 7th, 2017. Jonathan Cain, song written by Steve Perry, of course, and Neil Schon, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. The German pronunciation is Schon. It's a German word, I think, but it's Schon. Well, Neil Schon. He was a member. He was one of the founding members, perhaps the founding member of Journey. He was a member of Santana before he was a founder of Journey. This was back in 1973. Steve Perry was added just later on, maybe a couple of years later, I think. Well, one of the founding members of Journey, he was inducted into they deserved it. They deserved the induction to the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. 2017. But if you're into guitars, there's a lot of people out there into guitars. Neil Schon, he played the Gibson guitars over the years, and at one time he played a 1956 Les Paul Gold Top guitar, and by the late 80s, through a couple of companies or organizations, he manufactured his own guitars. He played his own guitars, manufactured his own guitars. The song, this guitar work featured prominently in songs like Be Good to Yourself and I'll Be Alright Without You and Any Way You Want It. Back in the spring of 1980, Journey, back in the spring of 1980, uh, Sean played the Gibson Les Paul Super Custom guitar on that record, which I think is a relatively rare guitar. My goodness. You know, the first Journey did come out with some brilliant records. They came out with brilliant singles, and they did come out with some brilliant album cuts. Now, I'm not going to put these guys on the same plateau as the Beatles or Led Zeppelin, but boy, they were, they were a fantastic band. Very talented, extremely talented band. One of the first songs I remember by Journey, "The Lights of the City," or "In the Lights of the City," back in the summer of 1978. This was one compelling record. I get goosebumps when I hear it now, 32 years later. Or is it 33 years later? 32 years later. Journey, "Girl Can't Help It," making its debut at number 39 on this fancy playlist of September 6, 1986.